Hey, it's Jim, and this is Level 3 of the CFA program, a constructed response set on the topic of ethical and professional standards. Certainly recall that there are 7 of these professional standards. I remember going through Level 1, I felt like it was just kind of one big standard. But as I moved through 2 and 3, it dawned on me that each of these standards is unique and important in and of itself. I'm hoping I don't need to go through these for you. You know, professionalism, integrity of capital markets, duties to clients, duties to employers, and duties to self, although that's the way I think of it. You know, being able to make a decision and look in the mirror. The Institute calls that investment analysis, recommendations, and actions. And then what I think is the most interesting and has the great potential for exam questions is conflict of interest. And then the last one being the use of the CFA designation. And for heaven's sake, it seems to me like this is a guaranteed question on the exam. Make sure you don't use it as a noun. I can't tell you how many times during the course of the year that I come across someone saying, oh, he's a CFA, or she is a chartered financial analyst. Just don't do that. Remember, adjectives. Just look at my name. You know, I got my name and then I have comma PhD, comma CFA. You know, that ought to be able to get you a good use of that, of the designation. Now, we'll cover a handful of these. So my advice is to separate these into each 7 and then go to the learning module and go through all those little mini cases. You know as well as I do. Some of them are just the little paragraphs. But that's what the CFA thinks is important. So my advice is to go through all those just so you have a good background. Because for me, the Level 1 Ethics and Professional Standards exam was very challenging because I had never done stuff like that. But by the time I got to Level 3, like you guys, I think these questions become way more easy, but you still have to prepare. All right, so there's the learning outcome statement. You guys know that one. So let's do this. I think it's been a couple of these since I've started by reading the questions. Let's start by reading the questions here. Boy, what did I just warn you? My favorite question, potential conflicts of interest. Okay, question 2, appropriate course of action about an offer. All right, and then justify those recommendations. We've got some clients' concerns about global tech's coverage, identify 2 specific actions, and then these quarterly facility visits. And so let me just give you kind of a precursor to what we're going to do over these next 2 slides. Is back when I was going through the program, in the handbook, there was a sentence or 2 that said something like, you know what, if you're offered a gift that is in excess of $100, you should probably reject it. And now that's gone out of the way because gifts, who knows what kind of gifts are out there that are being thrown about. But the important thing is if you're offered tickets to the World Cup, you probably shouldn't take them. Unless you pay for them. Of course, you can always pay for them. All right, here we have Carlton Capital and Marcus Zhang. Head of Equity Research, Carlton Capital, mid-size firm, finalizing coverage of global tech solutions. So remember, in those questions that I skimmed over a minute ago, global tech was referenced. Quantum computing technology. Oh, that sounds right out of science fiction. Given complex technology, CEO has offered Carlton's research team. All right. Offered Carlton's research team. I mean, what are these things? These are going to be extravagant offers, right? Exclusive access to the research and development facilities. Well, that sounds like a great deal, right? But what do we have to go through to get that exclusive access? 3 days of private demonstrations. All right, so demonstrations, that's probably okay. Quantum computing platforms, that's probably okay. But private demonstrations. So we need to worry about, the access to non-public material information here. Direct sessions with chief scientists and tech officers, that's probably okay. Comprehensive tech documentation not available to other analysts. So that kind of piggybacks on the word private up in that second bullet point. Oh boy, here we go. Luxury accommodation at the Four Seasons. Boy, I have a friend who works at the Four Seasons, and he tells me all these stories about famous people that come in, and he's able to take their luggage to their room and transport them around in a golf cart, et cetera, et cetera. So this is luxury stuff for those of you who don't know what about the Four Seasons. Premium dining experiences, executive transportation, Now wait a minute. So they cite the sensitive nature of their facilities, security protocols. So note, we're really good at this, just like the CFA is good at it, kind of making you believe that, hey, this is going to be okay, right? Notice we have in quotation marks, fully informed. All right, we receive an email from the largest institutional client who holds a significant position in Global Tech's main competitor. Oh boy, this goes back to that conflict, right? The client expresses concern about potentially initiating coverage of Global Tech. Let's not worry about how Global Tech found out about this, but let's worry about this coverage. So you have a client who's saying, you know what, I'm not quite sure. I'm happy with you. And remember that I'm paying you lots and lots of money. This goes back to the Enron. You guys know Enron's story. Enron was paying its public accounting firm $1 million a month. And so this firm was giving them accounting advice, but they were also managing their futures contracts and option contracts and swap contracts and all their derivatives. So there's a tremendous conflict of interest. Okay, so we've got that in this case as well. Let's see. Compensation structure includes a significant bonus tied to client retention. Oh boy. Currently lacks technical expertise in quantum computing. Gosh, who doesn't lack technical expertise in quantum computing? All right, so gaining access would give Carlton a unique edge in the market. That's why back here I said exclusive access. That sounds like a good deal, right? All right, so here are the 4 questions. Let's go ahead and just take a moment to digest these, even though we went through them quickly. Evaluate and explain, recommend and justify, determine and identify, analyze. So we're probably used to those action words. But now, as they relate to, well, I listed those 7 standards at the very beginning, but you can now pick out, you probably can pick out which of those 7 standards are in question here. So let's start with that first question. 2 potential conflicts of interest. All right, accepting lavish hospitality from Global Tech, right? Lavish. So if this is part of the essay, I would use the word lavish, even if it doesn't sound like it's lavish. If it's more than $100, although I don't know if that doesn't sound like it's pretty relevant anymore. But lavish. Use the word lavish and luxurious and all those kind of great words. Think of one of your favorite movies where people are, living the high life. Four Seasons. I'm guessing that the Institute is probably not going to use an actual famous luxury resort. They'll probably say something like, hey, we're staying at Jim's Hotel. And by the way, Jim's Hotel costs $10,000 a night to stay there. And you get a massage and there's a golf course, et cetera, et cetera. Premium dining services, executive transportation, that kind of stuff. So what this does, of course, is that this tends, right? I mean, we're all human, right? If I'm staying in this beautiful bedroom with silk sheets and a view of the Pacific Ocean, and I just got a massage and I just had lobster, I might think, these people, they're pretty nice. I'm going to go ahead and give them the benefit of any doubts that I come across during my research. So what are the bullet points down there? Sense of obligation or bias. Yeah, I would make sure you use that term bias in there, right? Subconsciously influence analysis. And this violates the independence and objectivity. This is that professionalism standard that I mentioned earlier. The second conflict then is, what do we do about our institutional client, which is probably a massive institutional client? What do we do about them suggesting that they're questioning our coverage of Global Tech? Well, first of all, evaluate that potential conflict, right? So there's the biased coverage. We might say something that we probably wouldn't say or write if we didn't and we're not aware of this conflict. So this is a compromise once again to independence and objectivity. So how do we take care of this? What are our recommendations? So of course we want to accept access to the facilities. We want to accept access to all this technical information because we want to make sure that we have all of the information. That makes perfect sense. Politely decline. Go ahead and use the word politely, right? You don't want to just say, you guys are trying to bribe me. I'm not going to go ahead and accept all this stuff. You can just say something like, you know what? We're more comfortable. We've made arrangements to stay over here at Jim's little rinky-dink hotel over here where they have Count Chocula for breakfast instead of lobster and eggs, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think this third bullet point is an important one. Disclosure, right? Disclose. The Institute, and I've talked about this before in previous recordings, that, you know what, let's just tell everybody about it. If we tell everybody about it, then it's probably, it's probably not a violation. I mean, we don't want to say, hey, I had lobster and steak and eggs for breakfast and tell everybody about it. We disclose that, but that doesn't make it right. But full disclosure, that's important. And then, of course, we've got the CFA Institute telling us what we can do about accepting or rejecting gifts and entertainment. But within our own firm, we very likely have our own kind of a policy. So we need to make sure that we adhere to all of this stuff. All right, how about question 2? Recommend an appropriate course of action regarding Global Tech's offer. Justify your recommendation. I think we covered a lot of these points here, right? We must maintain independence and avoid those situations that compromise objectivity. We want to uphold all of that independence and make sure there's that word. Well, it's unbiased here, but I said earlier, use the word bias and then go ahead and use the word unbiased. And then, of course, we need to know all about the law and all about the rules and all about the regulations. And so there are acceptable limits, right? We can stay at a hotel that doesn't have to be luxurious, but maybe they provide us with breakfast. That's probably okay. Now, moving on to question 3, how do we handle this institutional client's concern? Now, let's go back to the word I used just a few minutes ago, disclose. And we're not really formally disclosing anything, but what we want to do is we want to say something like, you know what, we have standards, we have requirements for independence in our research activities, and we need to proceed with this based on an objective analysis. And if you don't like what we have to say about it or publish about it, well, then we'll deal with that down the line. Right? So do not let that client's preferences influence our research decisions. So how do we maintain the compliance here? Well, let's just write everything down. Let's report it and let's figure this out about what is the process. How did we arrive at these decisions? You're going to document things. We're going to report on things. And this is consistent with professionalism standard as well. What we can also do, this is what I hinted at just a moment ago, is to communicate this to the client. And we'll say something like, you know what, the way we treat you is the way we're going to treat these people over here. Don't you want us to treat them the same way? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid we're going to come out and say, hey, this company over here, it's a huge buy, stock price goes up, and then your relationship with that competitor, well, let's just reiterate our commitment to unbiased analysis. And if you appeal to the professionalism in that institutional client, I think it's fine. And then moving on to the final question, proposed quarterly facility visits, suggest 3 specific modifications. All right, limit hospitality to necessary and modest levels. That makes perfect sense. Avoid receiving material non-public information. All right, so this is what I was saying earlier about the word. What was the word? There was a private in there, and then there was another phrase in there about what do we do? So let's go ahead before this starts, right? This is important. Before this starts, let's make sure that we don't want to receive anything that we shouldn't be seeing. Material non-public information. This is the integrity of capital markets, et cetera, et cetera. So remember, the Institute always says things like, you know what, if you come across this material, non-public information, encourage whoever has that information to disseminate that information as quickly and as easily reasonable as possible. I mean, it might not make sense, to get on the megaphone today and go out in the parking lot and say, hey, here's this public information, but encourage it to be released. Then once it's released, then you can go back and visit about what are the implications of it. And then here we go, disclose the arrangement and avoid preset schedules. So this aligns with a whole bunch of those standards, not just the duties to the clients, not just the investment actions and the duties to the SEP. But what we need to do is we need to make sure that we're consistent with all of those 7 standards. So let me go ahead and remind you that I would like for you to go to the learning module and go ahead and read over those 427 cases. I made that number up, but remember, they're just real small paragraphs. That gives you an idea of what the Institute thinks is important. So hey, have a great day. Thanks for watching and good luck studying.